So on this show, Comic Class, we try to cover all the big new comic book releases, but one major release that came out last month that we totally skipped was Justice League Dark. Because in all honesty, I read Justice League Dark #1 and I thought, you know what, it's alright. It's pretty good. It's not bad in any way, shape, or form, but you know, it's pretty good. There's all those characters, I know, they're doing some funky magic stuff. It's not bad, it's alright. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out a way to expand "it's alright" into 15 to 20 minute long episodes, no matter how long I held on that final pose there. But today, Justice League Dark #2 came out. I freaking love issue #2 of this series. Issue #2 of this series let me know, okay, now things are getting ramped up, now you see everything that's going to happen, and I am in. I am fully invested in this series. In fact, in all honesty, if you guys have watched this channel for a while, you know every single October we do a series called Thorgy-ween, in which we like to spotlight everything spooky and creepy. So I was actually planning on waiting to talk about this series in October, but screw that noise, this issue was so good I had to come in here and talk about it today. So what is this storyline about? Well, it's kind of an odd spin-off of not one major event, but two major events, with the second major event being a spin-off of the first major event. Yeah, DC is now currently in that phase that Marvel has been in for a little while, where we're just gonna start getting a lot of events from them over the next couple of years. That's just how things go. There is a weird kind of ride that comic books go on where we're gonna do a lot of events. Everyone's tired of all the events, let's do no events. Oh, nobody's tired of the events anymore? Let's go and do all the giant events again. And DC is now at that point where they're doing all the giant events again, and they're going to be in there for a little while, but that's just how comics are. That's just the phase that they all go through. But anyway, as I said, during the events of Dark Metal, when the Dark Multiverse invaded our reality, they ended up breaking the source wall, the giant barrier that cuts off our reality from who knows what else is beyond there. So now all kinds of crazy, giant, godly beings are making their way into our reality, including these creatures who help create life across the entire universe. They broke into our reality and they planted some seeds, and the seed of wonder ended up sprouting into a tree. So now there's this giant tree of wonder, and who knows what the heck that is doing, but it's raising all kinds of questions. But also, magic is now just broken. Nobody knows what's up with it, but for some odd reason, magic just ain't working like it should, and the DC magic community is getting together to try and figure out why, and what they can do to prevent this, and what they can do to kind of right the balance of the world. And I know you might be saying, didn't Marvel just do this exact same thing just a couple of years ago with Doctor Strange? Yes, kind of. Pretty much exactly. However, there are major differences between what they did over in the Doctor Strange book and what's going on over at DC. And the first major difference is just how magic is different in each of these universes. Magic over in the Marvel universe has always been way more of a superheroic thing. Magic over in the DC universe, it's been dark. It's been creepy. It's been spooky scary. I mean, DC actually launched the Vertigo line because their Swamp Thing book, when it started delving into magic, got way too creepy, and they're like, well, these stories are good and we want you to tell them, but it's kind of weird for you to be doing all this really spooky horror stuff over here and to have it exist in the same reality as Superman. We're just gonna shift you over here into your own line. Bam, Vertigo, enjoy, do everything that you want over there. So yeah, that's basically the big difference here, is that what we're seeing with magic being broken in the DC universe in Justice League Dark is way darker and way creepier than what we got in Doctor Strange when they did it. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that James Tynion IV is writing this book, and James Tynion IV knows horror. That guy has written horror series for years now, including Mimetic, which if you have watched this channel for a while, you know I love Mimetic. Mimetic is one of my favorite horror series of all time. And James Tynion doesn't just like horror, he also likes body horror. And there is a lot of that in here. This thing opens up with just a bunch of people being mutilated by weird, creepy Cthulhu tentacles because Zatanna is trying to do a magic act and she's trying to just pull a rabbit out of a hat, and then, you know, old gods start reaching out and just destroying people. Yeah, that's how this thing kicks off, and it doesn't slow down from there. After that, the rest of this first issue is just the main characters of this series all slowly coming together. But here's the thing, they don't want to get together because Wonder Woman is the one who is going around to everyone saying, no, this is a big deal. We need to be doing something about this. And Zatanna's like, yeah, we know it's a big deal, and we will handle it. Us, the magic community, over here, you're not with us. You just sit over there in the Hall of Justice and do your thing. And that's something I have to bring up about this. It's so odd to me that Wonder Woman is in a horror series. It's so bizarre for me to think that Wonder Woman is now going to be the leader of the Justice League Dark as they go up against creepypasta monsters, because the big villain that gets revealed for their first fight at the end of issue number 2, it's basically the Slender Man. I mean, it's not exactly the Slender Man, but I mean, it is like, oh yeah, that's something that I would totally see in the SCP Containment Breach game. So yeah, it is definitely far more just spine-tingling kind of stories that they're going to be telling in here, and it's so odd for me to think that Wonder Woman is the lead in that. But the reason why I'm able to overlook that is because this book acknowledges that. Because Wonder Woman is desperately trying to get people to come together to help solve this giant crisis with magic, and no one wants to do it because, yeah, Wonder Woman, you're not part of the magic community. She's like, I grew up on Themyscira. I rode a Pegasus when I was 8. I freaking am the daughter of Zeus, maybe? I don't know how our continuity is working anymore. We should probably be doing something about that. Let me go and talk to the Flash. He seems to know that something is up. I don't know. That's a matter for another day. Anywho, I know about magic. And they're like, yeah, you know about the bright, shiny magic. This is different. This is another thing over here. And there's a moment in which she goes to the Oblivion Bar, which I am so happy to see the Oblivion Bar back. One of my big problems with the fact that there is a Justice League Dark is just the fact that they're not calling them Shadow Pact. Because Shadow Pact was the magical team that DC had a couple of years ago, and Shadow Pact is basically whenever all hope is lost and no one else from the magic community can step up, a ragtag band of magic users have always come together under the name Shadow Pact. It's kind of an odd premise that there's just this title that gets passed down, but not from one character to another, but just through situations, but hey, that's magic, that's how that works. I always freaking love the Shadow Pact. And they brought the Oblivion Bar back, and it's like, okay, that was their headquarters. And they brought Detective Chip back, who he was one of the members of Shadow Pact. So, yeah, this is basically a new Shadow Pact book, but they can't call it Shadow Pact because calling it Shadow Pact won't make it sell. Calling it Justice League Dark will make it sell, so, hey, that's just how the business works, I understand. But she goes to the Oblivion Bar, and she meets Detective Chimp, and Detective Chimp just straight up tells her, yeah, man, it's you hang out in the Justice League. You hang out in a literal shining beacon of hope. You're not down here in the creepy corner where the rest of us magic users are. So even though, yes, you are magical, you don't know anything about us. So it's hard for us to get to trust you. And yeah, I kind of enjoyed that this book was self-aware like that. I enjoyed that this book was willing to come in here and acknowledge the fact that, yes, Wonder Woman is an odd choice to be leading a horror series. But Wonder Woman also acknowledges the problem here, and Wonder Woman does know about magic more than any of the other Justice League members. She realizes she's the one who has to do something about this. And she does get Detective Chimp to join her, and I really like that Detective Chimp. He's kind of in an odd position, because his old buddy Nightmaster, who was the former leader of the Shadow Pact book, he died during Dark Knight Metal. But he passed his sword along to Detective Chimp, so now Detective Chimp kind of has inherited the mantle of Nightmaster, and he doesn't know what to do about that. He doesn't know how to sword fight. There's a moment in the second book in which he actually says, I was kind of hoping this would be one of those magic swords that does all the fighting for you. Yeah, that kind of sums up the place that Detective Chimp is in. He's a detective and a chimp. He's not a knight. He is not a magical sword wielder. But now he is forced into that position. So yeah, these characters, all of them, not just Wonder Woman, find themselves in very bizarre new places that they have to deal with. Zatanna is another character in here who also is currently finding herself in a very odd position because she just can't use magic. Well, she can use magic, but when she uses magic, it summons out more of these old god creepypasta monsters that just starts destroying everything. So, in other words, her only magical power at the moment is creating more things that they have to fight. Yeah, so she's not going to use that. But this book actually has her go to this old house where all the magical members of the DC community have always come to meet during times of crisis, and this was a buffet of Easter eggs in here. I love just looking through this and going, oh, I know that character, I know that character, I know that character, and there's great interactions in here between these various characters. Like, there was a moment in which some characters from Hell are talking to some angels, like, so you guys have got our back if anything goes down, right? And they're like, are you out of your mind? We're not going to work with you. So yeah, I love seeing that the magical community is kind of squabbling amongst themselves when Wonder Woman, the person who they don't want to be in the magical community, is the only one who's actually trying to get them all to come together. It really is just a great premise and great setup and a great excuse to actually form this Justice League Dark. But she goes to this house and she ends up running into John Constantine, which this is the prettiest John Constantine I've ever seen. Like, John Constantine to me always kind of looks ragged. He looks beaten down. He looks like he just woke up in an alley somewhere. This John Constantine has got a freshly pressed suit. This guy looks like he should be on the cover of a GQ magazine. Not that I'm complaining about pretty John Constantine, I'm just saying it was kind of alarming to me to go, oh my god, that's a good looking John Constantine right there. But, so, she ends up talking to John Constantine, and one thing that I absolutely loved about this book is something that I love about everything that's going on right now with the DC Universe. They are very slowly, not all at once, but very slowly just going, yeah, all that stuff from our past, it still kind of happened, you guys. Because he actually does bring up here the fact that, yeah, he's kind of the reason why Zatanna's dad is dead. And I was wondering if they were going to come up with a new backstory for that. If they were going to come up with a new reasoning for that. No, they straight up said, yeah, there was this time that I had to have Swamp Thing go and fight the embodiment of all evil, and I convinced all you magic users to come together in this very house right here, and we all tried to use our magical powers to create a shield to help Swamp Thing, and the evil kind of seeped in, and it lit your father on fire. They didn't exactly say all that, but they did show the exact scene from that comic in which it happened, and as somebody who loved the old Swamp Thing series, yeah, it just felt good to know, oh, that still happened. That's all the continuity still here, everyone. Everything still existed. Alright, yay! Kind of like with Shadowpact. Shadowpact was just a thing that when the New 52 came around, it was like, nobody, just don't talk about the thing. But now the Oblivion Bar is back, Nightmaster was back for a little bit and now he's dead, but Detective Chimp is talking about the history that he had with Nightmaster, so it's very clear that, yeah, okay, even Shadowpact kind of existed in its own way, shape, or form. I mean, again, it'd be nice if they actually used the word, but hey man, we're only on issue 2. If at some point down the road, Detective Chimp actually says, you know, this really reminds me of Shadowpact, I will lose my mind in this series. And of course, the other two members of this team are Swamp Thing and Man-Bat, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in just a moment when I start talking about issue number 2, but where issue number 1 leads off, as I said, this is being written by James Tynion, and James Tynion loves body horror. And yeah, it's not particularly my favorite type of horror. It's actually pretty low on the list of subgenres of horror that I'm really into. But James Tynion is like the one guy out there who can really get me appreciating body horror. He's the one guy who really comes up with really disturbing scenes. And at the end of this, they are going into the basement of the Hall of Justice, where the Justice League decided to build an entire department dedicated to a Justice League Dark division that specifically deals with magic. And I love that they have like a giant dragon skeleton in there. Like, they decked this place out. And Wonder Woman is talking about how, yeah, we dedicated all this time and resources to building this place, and no one wants to join. I just find that so interesting. The fact that the Justice League can't get people to join this department, despite the fact that they invested so many resources into it. It's a very realistic thing, and it's a very relatable thing, and I always appreciate when you can take giant, big, massive cosmic concepts and really just boil it down to something that anybody can kind of appreciate, anybody can kind of relate to, which I felt like they did in that moment. But they go down to this morgue where Man-Bat is the one other member of this team that decided to join, and he is their scientist, and he is researching these bodies they've been finding. And these bodies, honestly, yeah, I'm kind of shocked that they put them in this book. I know it's not the Justice League, it's the Justice League Dark, so you can put dark stuff in here. But yeah, man, you've got people with like their stomachs bursting open and tentacles just spraying out. You've got people whose mouths are pried open so that a tinier face can emerge from inside. Yeah, it's really freaking graphic for a Justice League book. So I do kind of have to appreciate that DC was willing to come in here and go, yeah, we know that magic is dark in our universe. We know that James Tynion does really dark stuff. Just let him do it. Just back off and let the man work. I really have to appreciate that. But that leads into issue number 2. They fight off these corpses that come back to life, and Zatanna comes in here and goes, yeah, listen, I just got a message from my dad, who's kind of a flaming ghost, and he came in here and said, the owners of magic are returning. Mankind stole magic, and the original people who owned it are coming back. It did really kind of remind me of what we just saw in Justice League No Justice, in which it was, hey, the people who created all life in the universe, they're coming back now. And at first I was like, oh, okay, that's not that creative. That is kind of literally the thing that we just saw. But then I stopped and thought about it. I was like, we just saw that because the source wall was broken. Wouldn't other original From the Dawn of Time beings also be coming through? It's like, yeah, okay, we did kind of just see something like that, but it makes sense given what just happened that we would see other things very similar to this happening right now. And the second issue is all about this team coming together, because Zatanna goes, yeah, my dad, he didn't just give me that message, he also said, the 5 of us will join a team, and one of us will either save all of magic or betray us and destroy it all. And I'm gonna go ahead right now and say, it's gonna be Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is the one that Zatanna's dad was talking about. Wonder Woman is definitely the one who's going to be the central point in all of this. Maybe Detective Chimp, but mostly my guesses are on Wonder Woman, because she's the one that the magic community was turning away. She's the one that the magic community was saying, yeah, you're not like us, you can't play over here with the rest of us because you just don't understand magic. So if the big twist is that she has some ancient magic to her that has ties back to the original magic, and none of them knew anything about that, that would of course be the biggest twist of them all. Again, Detective Chimp, I could also see that maybe happening. He seems like he's in the right position for this, but I'm mostly going with Wonder Woman. So, the second issue, it doesn't just open up with Zatanna giving them this recap and saying, yeah, one of us might possibly could destroy magic or save it, who knows. It also opens up with a flashback to Wonder Woman as a child and says that, yeah, there were witches on Themyscira, and Mom told me never to go near them, but I was a curious child, so one day I went and I followed them into the woods, and I witnessed their ceremony. And as I said, James Tynion likes him some body horror. There is a whole sequence in here of these witches chanting and their bodies just merging together into just one being made up of multiple faces and arms. It's right out freaky. It is actually really kind of terrifying. And again, man, they did it like that. The opening of this book was able to come in here and go, set up for horror, execution of horror. Bam, done. Welcome for the nightmares. There you go, enjoy those. And these witches were worshipping Hecate, which is the Greek goddess of magic, witchcraft, the night, the moon, and necromancy. Thank you to Persona 5 for teaching me all about that. Yeah, it's really kind of alarming to see that in a Wonder Woman book, but at the same time, it was a Greek goddess. That was an actual thing from Greek mythology. There was a goddess of witchcraft and necromancy. And granted, I haven't read every Wonder Woman book in existence. Maybe they have brought this up. I don't remember it. I have never seen anybody bring up this fact that, yeah, doesn't she fight Greek gods? Isn't there a Greek goddess of, like, I don't know, evil magic and necromancy? Doesn't that seem like a thing that maybe Wonder Woman should go up against? It's so bizarre to me that I have never seen anybody use that, and yet it makes absolute sense. And the idea that Wonder Woman had a run-in with this goddess when she was a child, it makes me look at Wonder Woman being on the Justice League Dark team and go, oh, that makes absolute sense. Oh, heck yes. Oh, if this was the kind of stuff that she grew up around, heck yes, she should be on this team. So, again, I really appreciate in the first issue that they really did call themselves out and go, it's so weird for Wonder Woman to be on this team. And because Wonder Woman is not like the rest of the magic users in the DC universe, yeah, you know, none of them really want to associate with her. But then in the second issue, they come in here and go, oh, no, she's got magic cred. she's got some magic history here, okay? Let's examine some of the stuff that she grew up around, okay? So I'm not going to really spoil the big thing that happens in that flashback, but it's definitely a thing that is going to play out in the future of this series. But from there they go and talk to Dr. Fate, and Dr. Fate actually does kind of give them the origin story of magic in the DC universe, and it was kind of a Prometheus story. It was kind of, yeah, mankind kind of found magic and it didn't belong to them, and they took it. And they didn't just take it, they started putting it into things like, I don't know, the Helm of Nabu, or mystical swords, or other items to try and contain that magic, rather than letting it return back to its original users. It's so weird because it also kind of reminds me of what's been going on in the recent Avengers book. Over in the Avengers book, they came in here and said, here is the actual origin of why humans can use magic, why they have superpowers, why they have all these other cosmic abilities, and why they're capable of doing all these magical things. It's so weird that two books at the exact same time have been doing storylines about, hey, mankind is special because of this thing. By the way, I actually really like the current Avengers book. I'm just gonna go ahead and shout that out. I think it's a ton of fun. But back to Justice League Dark. So, he gives them the origin story of magic, and it was quite fascinating. I actually was really, really enjoying this. And it didn't stop there, because it's just Wonder Woman and Zatanna getting this speech. Man-Bat and Detective Chimp had to be left behind. They were not allowed into the inner sanctums of Dr. Fate's tower. And as they are out there, I really kind of got an appreciation for Man-Bat, because Detective Chimp was like, I hate towers like this, God, it's all ups and downs, who knows what's going on. Man-Bat was fascinated by all this, and I really appreciate having someone like that in this series. I really appreciated the idea that, okay, Man-Bat is here because he's a horror creature. I mean, he is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Frankenstein, he is a Mr. Frankenstein, that'd be a weird series. He is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type character, but he's also part werewolf in there. Like, you can see the inspirations from both those classic horror tropes in this one character, and this is a horror series, so even if he isn't a magical creature, that's why he's in this book. But I love the fact that he isn't a magical creature. I love the fact that he is a science creature. I love the fact that you have this guy who is on this team that is exploring the origins of magic, and he's looking at, like, Beast from the X-Men, or like Dr. Spock, just looking at it like, fascinating. I really appreciated that, but in issue number 1, I also really enjoyed that Detective Chimp was kind of calling him out like, yeah, aren't you the guy who just screwed up and turned himself into a giant bat monster? Why are you here? And rather than him like lashing out, rather than him getting angry, he was just like, I know, I don't want that to be my legacy, that I just turned into a giant bat. I'm sorry, man. I love that Man-Bat actually kind of was just sort of a sad sack, sort of just like, I know what I've become, I know what I am, and I don't want to be that anymore. I love this dynamic that he has on this team. But while all this is going on, you also have Swamp Thing off examining the Tree of Wonder, and there of course is an interaction between him and John Constantine, which again reminded me of that old Swamp Thing series. John Constantine first appeared in that old Swamp Thing series, and it was always just Swamp Thing sitting there going, what even am I? What should I become? And then John Constantine would just walk up out of nowhere smoking a cigarette and just go, well, here's something vague for you to think about. That will send you on a quest. I'm disappearing now. Bye. And that's kind of what happens in here. So yeah, James Tynion, you can tell he is a fan of that old Swamp Thing series. He was able to recapture that dynamic perfectly, but he also brings up a new status quo for Swamp Thing. And I looked at that and went, oh my god, this is kind of like where Swamp Thing was always heading. This is kind of his destiny fulfilled moment. And it raises huge questions for what's going to come up next for Swamp Thing. Will it even be the same Swamp Thing? Are we going to get a new Swamp Thing soon? Will this old Swamp Thing even be sticking around in a couple of issues? I can't wait to see what ends up happening with Swamp Thing in this book. And also, in all honesty, I'm just stunned that James Tynion hasn't written a Swamp Thing solo series before. He has to have at least pitched it over at DC. It just feels too natural. He's a horror guy, he does body horror, he does weird cosmic horror. That's literally everything about Swamp Thing in one character. So, yeah, it just got me so excited reading this one exchange between Constantine and Swamp Thing, because it made me go, oh my god, James Tynion is the perfect guy to write Swamp Thing. and I now have a book in which James Tynion will be writing Swamp Thing. So, I will not spoil what happens after this, but there is a massive, huge reveal. There is a giant twist, and the moment the twist gets revealed, it was legitimately chilling. Like, it's one of those reveals in which I start looking at happening, and I was like, wait, is that character? I think that's that character. I think I know him from this other thing. Why is he there? And oh, what's this thing that he's saying? Oh, no. And this has been Comic Book Reactions with Professor Thorgy and Scene. So yeah, I am really excited about this series. In fact, in all honesty, at the moment, this is the DC book that I am the most excited about. This is the DC book that if you ask me, what book are you looking forward to reading the most every single month from DC? This one. And we're only 2 issues in. But the fact that from issue 1, in which I was like, yeah, it's okay, it's alright. It went from there to I have to read issue 3. That's impressive. And that's the magic of James Tynion. James Tynion, I'm so happy to see that after years and years of him being one of the hardest working writers out there in the comic book industry, he's finally getting appreciated. People are finally going, oh, this is the stuff that he does well. Let's give him the biggest books out there that are going to do this stuff. And he is nailing it so far. So yeah, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts on Justice League Dark down below. And if you guys would like to see me talk about this book again in, I don't know, 2 months for Thorgy-ween, let me know that as well, because if issue 3 is anything like issue 2 and issue 4 is anything like issue 2, I want to talk about them. I want to come back to this series, but let me know all that down in the comments below, or you can reach me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. Thank you guys for tuning in, and come back next week. Bye.